Welcome to One Topic, where one topic really means a theme, an underlying theme with a loose red thread that ties an episode together. Look, we've been doing this for 5 years. The show's allowed to evolve. My name is Greg Russ. Autumn Fisher not with me this week because she's in Atlanta. When I was asking her about recording the show, her response was, it's a packed trip, going to be very busy. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who she's still got in Atlanta. Yes, the radio show is happening. The Carathon is happening, but her parents moved out of Georgia. I guess she has a friend there. But don't ask me why she couldn't find time. But I assure you, this episode won't just be my voice. It'll be my voice in that I will be the one speaking, but it would also be the voice of you, the listener. I will be answering listener-submitted questions on this episode of One Topic, where we stick to one topic. I printed them out on this sheet of paper. It felt like a nice thing to do. A blast from the past. Instead of reading off of a screen. The thing is, I don't even have a printer, so it was more of a pain in the ass. I had to go to the FedEx store, sit at one of those computers that you swipe your credit card in, and it charges you by minute and page. And the time, this is like those old 1-900 numbers, where I would call the Sierra Hint lines, in case you were wondering. It wasn't the 1-800 wet boobs or anything like that. Sure, at some point when I was a kid, you get curious and you dial the number and you hear the prompt before you put in. Well, I guess 1-900 started charging you right away. And then the 1-800 were the ones where you had to put in the credit card. This was the 1-800 when I was just curious. And you would hear, hey, put in your credit card now. Then I'd get scared and hang up. But the Sierra Hint line for the old Sierra Adventure games, like Police Quest, King's Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, I would call because I would get stuck. And I felt as though the menus were slow on purpose. The speaking was at half speed anytime you'd choose where you needed to go, because it was one number for all those games. And just to navigate to get to King's Quest 4, for example, that in itself took several minutes. And I feel as though the FedEx computer is the same. It's much slower. There must be a special processor they put in there. An Intel chip that runs at half speed. And the timer is on the screen, and you're watching that thing tick up. And then you think to yourself, why didn't I just read these questions off of a screen? What the hell is wrong with me? But you don't get the sound of the rustling paper. It's theater of the mind, and I really wanted to play into that. So, jumping right into it, a lot of these questions I am not really going to answer. For example, what do you think the biggest challenge facing society today is? Fuck that. I feel as though if you've been listening to this show that probably the last 2 months, if not more, every episode is complaining about the biggest challenges facing society. And on some level, I apologize for that. I feel as though it's probably becoming redundant. And if we're all experiencing it and thinking about it, maybe there's a level of comfort in it, a feeling of, oh, I'm not alone. Everyone feels like this. But at some point, I feel as though you listen to podcasts, watch shows, go to movies, listen to music to get away from that shit. So something like that. Or how do you see technology changing the way we live in the next decade? Come on. Who is answering that question? I guess plenty of people are. If you look, it's all about AI and how things are going to change, or politics and how it's going to change things. That's not technology, but you get my point. So no. What's the most important quality in a leader? These are fucking generic as shit. The same person I'm not saying the name of the person who submitted these because am not in the business of embarrassing people anymore. At some point in my life, I felt as though if something was entertaining at the expense of someone else, then all bets are off. Totally fine. There was, in high school, a time when I was known for tripping on purpose. I'd trip and fall down stairs and really throw my body into it. It wasn't this oh, I'm going to half-ass it thing. It's like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, and I may get hurt. But I tripped into a girl on purpose once, and she fell. And people were laughing. And I thought, man, you're a fucking asshole. She didn't do anything to you. She was just going about her day. You tripped, fell, knocked her over. She's the butt of the joke. Maybe she gets hurt. Fuck you. It didn't stop me for the next few years because I was an idiot. I was a young teenage idiot who thought tripping on purpose was funny. I look back and it's very embarrassing, and to share it with you, I don't know, there's some level of hesitancy, but I'm also painting myself as a prick, so I think that works pretty well in helping accomplish that. I eventually, in that moment though, I even felt bad. I think this is not what I want to do. I don't want to make other people the butt of the joke. People who are just trying to go about their lives. There's enough going on. They deal with enough. I'm just saying that despite that feeling, I really pushed it down. I thought, don't grow a conscience on me now. We don't need that conscience. Moron. Keep doing what you're doing. The audience at North Cobb High School is counting on you to put on a show. Fucking dumb. Jesus Christ. So what was the question? What is the most important quality in a leader? Realize that you're a piece of shit. That you're in a position of power and you should take that seriously, and you're no better than anyone else. Maybe not all managers. I was going to say maybe as a manager, you know more about the job that the people who are working under you do, but I feel as though for the most part, a lot of people who are managers don't even know the fucking job that their employees are doing, so that goes out the window. But even, let's say, as this thing should be set up, as a manager, you possess greater knowledge of the skill that your team executes on a daily basis. That doesn't make you better than them. That's where I was originally going. There are a bunch of soft skills that go into managing, and my view of being a manager is how can I get the best out of my team, make them feel heard, make them enjoy their jobs to the extent you can enjoy a job. I don't really think that a job is there to make you completely happy, but it also shouldn't be some bane on your existence that drains your soul. And what can I do to get the team the things that they need? There are some people that when they get into management become complete advocates for the company. And yes, the company is hiring you, and I take being a professional very seriously. When you're paid to do a job, your agreement is I will do that job to the best of my ability. And part of best of my ability is not fucking over the company. But some people really crawl up the ass of the corporation. And I get it to an extent. You want to advance your own career, but step back for a second and think about it. You've got people on your team where your actions have real world implications in their lives, and you've got the corporation who really doesn't give a shit about you. They don't. Admit it. It's okay. Get over it. It's like the person who wants the teacher's pet, to love them. I'm the best student in the class. I'm going to raise my hand. Maybe the teacher actually did care to an extent, though I also think the teacher probably went home at night and thought, fucking Susie, Jesus Christ. Calm the fuck down. But anyway, to wrap up that question, it also depends on what you're doing for a job. If lives are at stake, then things become a little more serious. If you're creating paperweights in a paperweight factory, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty real world cases where paperweights are needed to make sure your 50 cent a piece FedEx printed papers don't blow in the wind. But at the end of the day, the world's not going to change too much if the paperweights get out 5 minutes later than originally expected. You don't need to shit on your employees if that happens. If it happens on a regular basis, sure, 5 minutes can compound and turn into a year at some point. I get it. But day-to-day operation, the most real-world effects that I can have on the world are tied to the lives of the people who work under me. That's where I look. That's where I say, hey, a difference can be made right here, immediately. I can see the real-world results, and that is important to me. I'm not touching that one. How can we foster greater empathy and understanding between different cultures? Don't be a fucking dick. How about that? Don't fucking care about things if it doesn't negatively affect your life. How about that? What do you believe is the key to a fulfilling life? Realizing what a piece of shit you are and operating from that baseline. There's a theme here that you see. I know that comes off harsh, but I do mean it. I think if you realize I'm not that special, I'm not that important, it doesn't mean that you dismiss anything that you want or need or wallow in self-pity. But if you start from the baseline of I'm a piece of shit, everyone's a piece of shit, and you build from there, I think it helps keep things in check, especially your ego. How can we address the issue of climate change in a meaningful way? Nope. Okay. What if cats ruled the world and their primary form of currency was tuna fish? Then we'd have banks and ATMs that spit out chunks of fish. I would assume that the currency, like maybe $100 bill would be a dried out strip of fish scales, tuna fish scales, and a quarter would be a cube of tuna fish meat, and a penny would be the tuna's eye. And if cats were ruling the world, they would be the dominant species, and as a human, we would be pets, and none of this would fucking matter. What if every time you sneezed, a tiny unicorn appeared and granted you one random wish? I would have 0 wishes because I rarely sneeze. I was thinking about this the other day. I do not sneeze that often. And I don't know if that's something that I should be concerned over. Is sneezing or lack thereof bad? Good? What does it mean? Part of it may be that things aren't getting into my nose to make me sneeze because it doesn't work very well. Because I broke it on purpose when I was in middle school. Well, I let me reframe that. I didn't break it on purpose. I pressed down on the bridge of my nose for years straight on purpose, which led to a broken nose and deviated septum. All because one kid told me I had a big nose. Some racist little piece of shit said that this guy named Moses, who had a big nose, called him Noses, said, "What's up with that Jew nose?" And then looked at me and said, "You're not much better." Fucking little fucking shit. Somebody that you look back on and you think, fuck that guy. What the fuck kind of power did he have over me and why? These are things you got to figure out when you go to years and years of therapy. But when you're in middle school and trying to figure it out, all you do is break your own nose. So I don't sneeze. Thank you for opening that can of worms with that question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why would you use it? It would be to make people disappear. And the people who know those people forget about them when they disappear. I'm not saying this should be painful, but I would use it to make the world a better place. Anybody who is causing problems for other people, that really is the line that I set. Do whatever the fuck you want in your life. The moment it affects somebody else negatively, fuck off. And if my superpower existed, it would be to zap people into non-existence. What if you could have a deep conversation with any inanimate object? Fuck if I know, man. You talk to people, and they're inanimate objects. What kind of conversations are you having with people in your daily life? Yes, there are people that you know and like and love, and you have good conversations with them. But 80% of the people you come across, if you get into any kind of conversation, it becomes the person wanting to talk about themselves. They ask you questions to set themselves up so they can tell you something about their life. You take a breath, they use that as an opportunity to jump in and turn the conversation about themselves. So if I took a pair of scissors and the scissors were able to talk to me, and I asked the scissors about the most interesting things they cut in the world, and they would say hair and paper and one time an Amazon package, but usually my owner uses a knife for that, and they couldn't find the knife, and that was a highlight of my life. That would be 1,000,000 times more interesting than the person who's walking down the sidewalk and you eavesdrop on their conversation that they're having with their both AirPods in. If you're on the phone, by the way, use one AirPod. Listening to music, too, is totally fine. Having a conversation, one, allows you to gauge the volume of your voice in the space that you're in. Obviously, when you plug your ears, you're going to speak louder. So when you're walking, if you're in an enclosed space and both of your ears are plugged with AirPods and you're having a conversation, it's going to be a lot louder than the space demands. And then we all have to hear about the party that you're throwing on Saturday night and how you're having trouble figuring out who to invite. And if you don't invite all the people that you think you should invite, some people are going to be upset and sad, and it's going to destroy their lives, even though you're not that important. I've battled with this on the other side, the flip side. I don't want to throw parties, but being invited to a party, if I don't want to go to the party, there was a point, it's like, man, if I don't go, it's going to really disappoint that person. It's going to crush them. Will they even still be able? No, the party's going to be fine. They're not going to care. They're not going to think about it. You're not that important. I think this is why I don't speak much these days. Yes, strange that I'm doing a podcast, which has come up several times over the years recording this show. I have difficulty reconciling the fact that I find any kind of motivation to sit here and share my thoughts, as if they're any more important or interesting than the thoughts of other people. And I know you're probably thinking, well, you just said other people's thoughts aren't interesting and important, and people are pretty stupid. Yes, that's what I'm saying, that I fall into that category. Not that anyone and everyone should be doing this. Maybe nobody should be doing this. But for whatever reason, some of you listen, and as cynical as I can come off, I sit and I think about things and I appreciate things, and I just don't share that with most people because those are private, important, meaningful things to me. And if I put them in the world, somebody else will say, nice Jew nose, and that will ruin those things for me. I will destroy them. So that is why I don't share the more positive things. And maybe it is a problem. Maybe it's an issue. But I am grateful for the fact that anybody wants to sit and listen to this show. It does mean a lot to me. And as difficult as it may be for me to justify to myself doing a podcast, the idea that maybe anyone, one person, can sit and listen to it and find a little bit of enjoyment in it is the reason to keep doing it. When I first got into radio, that was the reason I wanted to do it. If I could make a person forget about the shittiness of life, that's what I used to tell myself, then it's worth doing this. There's always ego involved, and on some level, you do think there's value to what you think and have to say. But going back to even being a manager, a leader, it doesn't make you better than anyone else. And I've always tried to maintain that. You come across way too many people in any kind of industry where they are performing, they're presenting, they're writing, and my fucking God, do they think they are stars. There are podcast hosts that I know, and I will not name, but they have popular shows. I don't have a podcast that gets 600,000 downloads. That's a nice podcast. But when you do the math, just the population of this country alone, it's not a huge percentage of the people who are listening to the podcast. So why are you walking around like some superstar, acting like a shit, treating your staff and your crew like garbage? Get over yourself. Be grateful for what you have. Say, hey, this is pretty cool that I get to do this thing. And anybody, one person finds enough value in it to tune in, instead of strutting around and expecting people to bow and kiss your feet. Or when you enter the office, I'm here. You know what? I don't give a shit that you're there. What if every person had a personal time traveling device, but only to go forward 1 minute? I'd say that was a pretty worthless time traveling device. What would you do skipping ahead 1 minute? Can you return? Can you go ahead 1 minute and then return? If you can do that, then you can do some live betting on sports and get the outcome. Or you can ask a question and then jump a minute in the future and see what the person's response is. And if it's going to be complete and utter rejection, you can go back and not ask the question. So I think it's totally dependent on if you can travel back after you travel forward. If it's just traveling forward, I don't find much value. I guess in a situation where the podcast host who thinks they're hot shit walks into the room, you can travel forward the 1 minute and hope that in that amount of time they got through the room and you don't have to see them. That's a real use case, but I feel as though they're going to linger in the room for more than 1 minute as the employees fawn all over them. The hushed tones. You see who just walked in? Oh my God, can you believe who it is? Yes, this is obviously based on real experience in my life, and it rubs me the wrong way. Again, the number of listeners that these shows get, while not inconsequential, the Von Hessler Doctrine in Atlanta in one city, if you break down the number of unique listeners, it's about the same. So you get the same number of listeners that some of these podcasts get. And granted, I'm only on the show a few times a week for an hour, hour and a half at a time. It's not that I'm on it constantly. But I could take that and say, I've got, at least for a small amount of time in my life per week, the same amount of reach as you do. But I prefer most people actually don't even know that. Because the less people know about me, the better. Why don't you share more about yourself? It's a question I get quite often. I'm not purposefully sitting here withholding information from anyone. If I felt as though there was something that was important for me to say, I would say it. But for the most part, nothing feels that pressing. So in any given circumstance, I don't feel a need to speak. When I do feel a need, I will speak. Outside of that, personal details, none of your business. I don't want you knowing. I prefer you not to know. And the people that I do want to know, I feel as though I've told them everything of substance there is to know about myself. And at some point, that well is exhausted. It's dry. It's like, okay, I told you everything. There's nothing new. It's not that exciting of a life. And that's not wrong. I don't feel bad. I'm not bungee jumping and zip lining and riding sky bicycles and kayaking with piranhas. All right, what do we have? One last question. I'll get to one last question. What if every time you laughed, a random object would levitate? Nothing would be levitating. There would be... Now I'm laughing over the fact that I don't laugh, that I rarely laugh. I laugh when things are funny. I just don't think too much is funny, I guess. It takes a lot. But sometimes it is small things. I shouldn't say it takes a lot. I couldn't sum up what makes me laugh. Anything that's authentic and not trying too hard. Something that maybe is small, but absurd. Those things will get me to laugh. Anybody who desperately is trying to be funny, it's not going to work. Anybody who does physical, over-the-top, slapstick, falling on purpose in the hallway, knocking people down comedy, it's not going to make me laugh. So not many things would be levitating. And what a dumb question anyway. Okay, if every time I laugh something levitated, then it levitated. What do you want me to do about it? What, is it a bad thing? I guess it depends on what's levitating. If it's a heavy object, then yeah, it could be dangerous. If it's a stuffed animal or a bag of peanuts, great, kind of cool. Maybe I'd look for things to make me laugh so I could have everything levitating around me. Can you make a person levitate? That would be a good trick. You could take it to the stage. You could be the stand-up comedian, but I guess it's when you laugh and not when other people laugh. But if you're a bad stand-up comedian and you're the one who's laughing on stage when you're bombing because you're trying to prompt the audience to laugh and you're trying to fill in the awkward silence, then you would levitate in those moments. Then people's minds would be blown and you'd still find success. So I think it could be a very positive thing if objects levitated every time you laughed. Excuse me while I sip that now cold coffee. The hot coffee I had when I started the recording. Yeah, I think that's what I've got. Some of the questions I didn't answer. What if plants could form unions and demand better soil conditions? It's a cheap attempt at satire. What if dreams were a shared experience and everyone on Earth dreamed the same thing every night? I think that was a movie with Nicolas Cage that just came out called Dream Scenario. So nice try, but it's been explored and it doesn't turn out too well. If you haven't seen that movie, I would recommend it. I found moments of that movie to be funny. And then my whole apartment levitated. Well, that's it for this episode of One Topic. Thank you for listening. Autumn and I will talk to you next week. I don't really have any kind of closing. No words of advice. No insight, no prophecy. Just realize that you're a piece of shit. And that's okay. Start from there. And I think you'll have a nice life.